Amen. Amen. I want to share one more story of gratitude from my life that is especially relevant to where we're at as a church. And I appreciated kind of the open sharing time. The story I just shared about my health stuff, I wasn't even planning on sharing that. That one was a little more personal just in terms of some of the stuff I've been going through, and I appreciated I was inspired by you guys. There's another story I was actually planning on sharing that I thought, like I said, was really perfect for who we are and where we're at. As some of you may know, I try to lead community gatherings, places in the community where people can come and find belonging, find a place where they fit. And of course, we started this church so that all people could belong and contribute, no matter your background or your story, to find a place to belong in the family of God. And I was so inspired by the stories you guys just shared about how God is really building a family here. But I don't just want that for those who are already maybe interested in church or interested in God's family, but trying to sort of, like get a beachhead in the community. Let's establish an outpost where people can come who maybe don't even know what they're looking for, but they're craving this sort of community that I believe God offers. And so I've started various things in the community. I lead a book club, and I'm involved with Meetup, actually coaching and mentoring and providing support for organizers of meetups in Los Angeles, and just try to provide spaces for, hey, if you want a community, there's a place for you. Or if you want to be a person who builds community, I want to be a support to you, and different things like that, involved with local businesses and coffee shops. And even was so blessed this week, a local business gave me a bunch of gift cards, say, hey, or just hand these out at church to people. I was like, okay, cool. So we've been so fortunate in the way that we've been able to build relationships in the community. But a big heart that I have is to provide that space for people and to represent God's love there in that space. And so a couple of weeks ago, somebody came to one of the community events that I organize and shared something with our group that I thought was really symbolic of or representative of something that I come across a lot. And this person just shared it with such perfect words that I thought I'd share it with you. This person that I met was new to the city, just moved here. 40% of people who live on the east side over here are not from California. They've moved here from somewhere else, not born here, didn't grow up here, don't have roots in the community. And so this person came and said, yeah, I'm new to the city. I've got one cousin in town, but really I'm on my own. And so I came here looking for a place to make friends and to get to know people. And as we were talking, the conversation evolved, and this person said, actually, what I'm really looking for is I'm really looking for a mentor. And so I'm going to all kinds of different things in the community, looking for someone to show me the way. This friend said, I have to figure out my career, I have to figure out my relationships, I want to figure out my spirituality, and in all of these things, I'm sort of trying to find myself and find level ground. And so I'm sort of hoping to find someone or some people who can help me on my journey. Well, I started this group knowing that was a need in the city, and the group was formed for the very purpose of coming alongside people who are seeking. And so this new friend of mine and I have been getting together to watch sports and read the Bible, as I can think of no better thing to do with my time. And so we've been walking through God's story, reading through the scriptures while watching Laker games over a drink, and doing some other things to develop a friendship. And it's a mutual kind of thing where we learn from one another. We're community for each other, and ultimately we're kind of seeking God and seeking maturity together. But I tell you this story because I told you I'm involved in Meetup, and some months back they flew me out to New York for an event at the Meetup headquarters in Manhattan. And I was a part of kind of some stuff there and got to share a little bit of my story at the event. And I got to talk with some of the staff on Meetup. Meetup, if you're not familiar, is an app where people can go on the app and find like, all right, who else is into frisbees, or who else is into walking their dog at the park, or who else is into Zydeco music or whatever, and you find that those people who have your shared interests. And I was talking to the staff at Meetup about, why did you start your company and what's the purpose of your company? And I said, well, we started it right after 9/11, when we looked around and we realized nobody knew their neighbors and we were isolated and nobody had family in the city. And so we started this so that people could be more connected to one another. And as they were telling me this, and one of the big things that we talk about in our company is that in decades past, people used to go to the church for this. But now, they don't have it anymore. And so somebody needs to step up and fill the gap and provide what the church used to provide. And me standing there as a church leader, it like hit me in the soul. You ever had somebody punch you in the soul? I don't know if you know what that experience is like. I felt like this person punched me in the soul. And it was like, ugh, just like you got punched. That was the feeling. And there was this moment, I was like, man, people in the city, people in our nation are so desperate and hungry for something that God has promised. And yet, the consensus is, but the church isn't offering it, so we got to figure this out ourselves. Over the course of the last 100 years, the amount of churches per person is 10% of what it was 100 years ago in America. So there's 1/10 the amount of churches per person in America than there were 100 years ago. And I'm not suggesting that 100 years ago they were necessarily super healthy or awesome, or maybe if it was all working, they would still all be there. But there was this dream that began of, man, people who are looking for something more, looking for something deeper, is the church going to be there to offer it? Is the church going to be there to see the need, to care about the need, to be a family to the familyless, to be the hope of the world that Jesus designed it to be? Or has the church abandoned the city? And so as I think about what I'm grateful for, one of the things I realized is thinking about this friend that's probably going to come here on a Sunday at some point. I'm so grateful for all of you, because I know that this friend is going to be welcome when they come. Is going to feel valued, feel seen, feel known. That this friend is going to have somebody besides me remember their name and ask them about where they're from and care about their passions and their dreams. And I know that's true because I've had other friends that I brought here, and some of the stories that were already shared today were examples of your faithfulness as a community to love people well. And I dream and I believe that we can offer a kind of belonging and kind of hope to our neighborhood. The kind of belonging and hope that only Jesus can offer. And so I'm thankful. I'm thankful for some of you who are here today who were a part of this before any of this even existed. And I think about Tim, who shared, and his wife Shauna, who do the tech and the kids. And I think about the Yoshikawa family and all that they've done since a year before we started Sunday services, getting together for Bible study. And Seth and Hannah Trey, and from that same first step, first moment, selling and leaving everything behind and moving here when none of this existed yet. And John and Joy Mitchell and others. And there were other people who didn't come join us full time, people who didn't move, but people who served as sort of a scaffolding on the church, and who would drive down for a one-off on a Sunday to say, hey, I'll hold a baby for a Sunday while you guys figure this out, and while people come up internally to fill the gaps. And hey, we can put on an event and host a movie night, or We can give financially to buy you guys sound equipment so you can have a band. We have a church that sent us out. And some of you may not know, but this church that sent us out from Lancaster, I get, not a week goes by that somebody doesn't reach out to me and say, hey, how's it going? I'm praying for you. Or that somebody from far away doesn't love you guys enough to send a check to turn on the lights in this building. And we've been welcomed here in this community, and I'm grateful. Because the school didn't have to give us this space or work with us or be such a great partner. And the local businesses and cafes and people who've hosted events for us, and they didn't have to say, please come to our city. They could have said, get out, we don't want you. There's enough people here. There's not enough space for us. Why don't you get out of here? That's what they could have said. That's what I would have said. No, I wouldn't have, but it might have been tempting. And you, just being here, believing in this. Believing that maybe God is up to something. Maybe something worth being a part of. And so I am grateful to each one of you for being a part of this family. This family literally could not exist without you. We would be going anyways. We would not be giving up the dream, but it would be worthless without you. Because we're in it together, and you have been there for me, and you have been there for each other, and I know you will be there for my loved ones when I bring them in their moment of need. And I know that when you bring your loved ones in their moment of need, that we'll be there for each other. So thank you. Thank you so much. As we finish today, we're finishing up our Jonah series. We've been in the book of Jonah for the last 4 weeks. We're in Jonah chapter 4. It's a quick, easy read, and so we're in the last chapter. I like short books. Some of you may be readers. Some of you are like, man, I can barely read a form. I don't read the directions on a form. I don't like to read. Jonah, the book of Jonah has been a good short book, and we're already done with it. We start our Christmas series next week. But we're finishing up the book of Jonah. And so if you have a Bible, you can open it up there. It's about maybe 2/3 of the way through the book. If you just Google search, you'll find the book of Jonah. We'll have some of the scriptures on the screen. But as we open up to the book of Jonah, I want to ask you a question. How do you know if you're grateful? Like, how do you know if you're a grateful person? I just talked a lot about things that I'm grateful for. Does that make me a grateful person? Are you a grateful person if you say thank you a lot? Are you a grateful person if when good things happen you feel lots of warm and fuzzies, and those warm and fuzzies hang around longer than for other people? Are you a grateful person if the people in your life feel appreciated, feel like you're a grateful person? I don't want to accuse you of anything, but I imagine most people in this room like to think of themselves as grateful. I don't think anybody in the room is like, man, I really want to be less grateful this year. Like 2019 life goals, I'm setting some resolutions in advance, less grateful. I don't know if anybody's writing that on like their Facebook status January 1st, but I assume that we all want to be grateful people who appreciate the goodness in our life. Nobody wants to be a stick in the mud and a cynic just for the sake of it. But how do you know? How do you know if you're actually a grateful person? And today, as we finish up the story of Jonah, we're going to examine Jonah's gratefulness, or his lack thereof, his lack of gratefulness. And we're going to begin to wonder, what is the lifestyle characteristic of a truly grateful person? Remember, Jonah, in Jonah chapter 1, was called by God, and God said, go to Nineveh, and I want you to call out against the evil there. Remember, this was an enemy city that was known for their war crimes and their humanitarian abuses. These were, if you would think of like a modern terrorist organization or a tyrant who is running a regime where people are being killed and there's no civil liberties and that kind of thing. That was the picture the reader would have had. Okay, there's this foreign sort of Nazi empire was the picture people would have had in their minds. It's the enemy in the Hunger Games. It is Lord Voldemort. It is like not good, okay? We don't like these people. That would have been the sense that the reader would have had when they're reading the story. And God said to Jonah, hey, I want you to go to them. I want you to go talk to them. I want you to go represent me to them. And Jonah's like, no way, peace out. I'm not into this. He runs the other way. He gets on a boat. He's on that boat, and God sends a storm, and all the people on the boat are like, hey, Jonah, don't you think you should listen to God? And he's like, no. In fact, I'd rather you kill me than me go listen to God. So they throw him off the boat. He starts sinking into the water, and all the people are like, man, this guy Jonah, what's his deal? He's the worst. He's that, he's just the guy who doesn't return things when they borrow them. It's just like the worst people. This is Jonah. And maybe that doesn't get you mad, but for me. And so Jonah's sinking to the bottom of the water, and he's dying, and God is like, hold up, Jonah, I've invested way too much in you for this. And so God does a miracle. He sends a fish to swallow him. And the whole point of this miracle is that when we're in the grave, when we're dead, when all hope is lost, God hasn't given up on us. And God gives second chances. And so we read this prayer of utter need, utter reckless abandon, just saying, God, I cannot save myself. I'm drowning at the bottom of the ocean. You got to rescue me. And so God puts Jonah on dry land, and God is like, hey, Jonah, you want to go where I told you to go this time? And so Jonah goes, and he goes to the city of Nineveh, and he calls out to them. He says, hey, you're evil. It's like not even a very nice message. And all the people in the city come to a place where they go, oh, like, this is not good. We got to change. And Jordan shared this last week about how they begin to rethink their thinking. And from the king all the way to the lowest, for everybody in the whole land, they began to rethink their thinking about who God is and about what life is about. And they turned to God. And God relented of any punishment towards the people for their evil. And he had compassion on them. And just like God gave Jonah a second chance, God gave the people of Nineveh a second chance. God didn't give up on the city. But he loved the people there. And so you would think God, this God of love, this God of second chances, that everybody would be feeling pretty grateful. Jonah's like, man, I was literally drowning in the ocean, and now I get to be alive again. I would be grateful. All the people in the city who had been engaged in war crimes, and they've been given a second chance. You'd think, oh man, I'd be grateful. And so we're going to read the prologue today, and we're going to find out what was going on in Jonah's head. If you have a Bible, we're actually going to start in Jonah chapter 3, verse 10. The last verse, just to kind of catch us up. It says, when God saw what they did, how they turned from their evil way, God relented of the disaster that he had said he would do to them, and he did not do it. But it displeased Jonah exceedingly, and he was angry. Jonah is such a punk. Are you kidding me? God gives Jonah a second chance. Then he gives the people in Nineveh a second chance, and Jonah's pissed about it. He's like, God, how dare you? You know, in the original Hebrew, it actually, the sense of it uses the word evil when it says it displeased him. It says it was very evil to Jonah, and so it made him angry. Jonah thought that it was evil of God to forgive his enemies. And so he was mad. Jonah was not grateful. He was angry. Have you ever had a friend who did you wrong. Maybe they mistreated you, they lied to you, they borrowed something without asking, or they just disrespected you. And then they said they were sorry, and then they did it again. And it was like, oh man, they must not have understood what sorry meant. Okay, no, let me explain it to them again. You go, hey, that really wasn't cool. It hurt me when you did that, or actually I needed that. I was going to pay my rent with that money, and you try to explain, like, hey, this is a big deal. And they're like, oh, I'm so sorry. It'll never happen again. And then they do it again. Oh, those people, right? Like, you don't even know how to be friends with those people. You don't even know how to have a relationship. You're like, I don't even want to take your calls anymore. I'm not going to text you back because it's just the same old story over and over again. That's what's happening with Jonah here. Where Jonah ignores God, he runs away from God. God gives him another chance, and Jonah is just like, man, I don't want to do your deal, God. I don't want in. I'm not really sorry. I was sorry that I was like stuck in the water, but once you rescued me, like can't I do my own thing? It's hard to be grateful when you're angry. And Jonah was angry. Why was he angry? Verse 2. Jonah prayed to the Lord and said, O Lord, is not this what I said when I was in my country? That is why I made haste to flee to Tarshish. For I knew, he says, this is why I was angry. Here's why I didn't want to do what you wanted me to do. He says, I knew that you were a gracious God and merciful, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love, and relenting from disaster. Therefore now, O Lord, please take my life from me, for it is better for me to die than to live. And the Lord said, do you do well to be angry? Jonah was mad because look at these words. God was gracious. God was merciful. God was slow to anger. He was abounding in love. God relented from disaster. He was mad at God for being nice. He's like, I knew you were one of those nice people. I knew that you weren't going to get me my revenge. Jordan talked about this last week, that God is holy and loving. He punishes evil, but he also relents from disaster because he cares about us. God, he's fully both. He's just and he's merciful. Just, meaning he does what is right. He punishes evil. He stands up for those who are being mistreated. He gives people what they deserve. God is a just God, and God hates sin. Now, some of you, that might be offensive to your sensibilities, that God could hate something or be mad at something or punish something. But think about it. Some of you may say, man, I want total freedom. I want to be able to live my life however I want. I think everybody should be able to just do whatever makes them happy. But really, you don't believe that. Because nobody here wants a world where everyone's just allowed to murder whoever they want. Right? Nobody wants a world in which people are just allowed to take whatever vengeance whenever they feel like it on anyone. Nobody wants a world with misogyny and corruption. And for you, I don't know who your enemy is, right? It might be somebody on the opposite side of the political aisle. It might be, you may have like a bitterness in your heart towards the rich or to the poor or to people of another culture or race, or you may be mad at your parents and the generation that came before you. But all of us, we have these gripes with the world that we live in, and this sense of justice. That, hey, there needs to be goodness in the world. There needs to be respect in the world. There needs to be a certain way you ought to treat people in the world. That certain things shouldn't be allowed. And we may disagree about where to draw the line, and we may disagree about what's good and what's bad. And each one of us kind of wants to be our own king, our own God, and decide where the line is. But all of us have a sense of justice. A sense that, you know what, there's just certain things that nobody should do. There's certain things that are good and certain things that are bad. And I would contend that nobody here wants a God who doesn't hate sin, who doesn't punish sin. Because I think if we're really honest, a God who turns a blind eye to a world in which there's sickness and death, a blind eye to a world in which some are poor while some are rich and some go hungry, a God who turns a blind eye to inequality in society and the workplace. I think if we're honest, maybe the reason sometimes we're mad at God is because we think he's not hard enough on some of these things. We think, why aren't you doing something? Jonah was not mad at God for being just. Jonah was mad at God for being forgiving. Jonah says, I knew you were going to forgive them. I knew the reason you were sending me was not to judge them, but to rescue them. Jonah says, I knew, God, the reason you were sending me was because you love them. And that bugged Jonah. How could God forgive those people like that? Sometimes we have that objection to church. You ever met church people? This is a great church, but church people other places. Sometimes you meet church people, right? And you go, how could God love that person? They're always they just think they're better than everybody. Jonah was those kind of, just like, Jonah was one of those church people. You just, bless their heart. You're just like, he's in my small group, but I don't have to talk to him outside of small group. Jonah was just one of those guys, it's like, always thought he had the right answer, and always thought he knew better, maybe. I don't want to go to church with that guy. That was Jonah. You think, sometimes we're mad at God for who he loves. God, read that again, is full of grace, mercy. He's slow to anger. He's abounding in steadfast love. He's relenting from disaster. It's describing a never-stopping, never giving up, forever kind of love. Mercy is when you don't get punishment that you deserve. Grace is when you're given a reward, a gift that you did nothing to work for or earn. And Jonah is mad because the love of God is absolutely free of charge. And Jonah was a hypocrite who forgot that he had been rescued. You see, Jonah wanted justice on his behalf. He wanted to be treated with mercy. He wanted to be defended. But he didn't want justice for his enemy. To put it another way, God wanted to pour out his justice on his enemies. He wanted to punish his enemies for his wrongdoing, but he wanted grace for himself. And that is a very common human feeling. To say, well, of course I should be forgiven. I'm a good person. And we extend the circle and we say, yeah, the people who think the way I do, the people that I've met, that I've locked eyes with, I know those people. Those are good people. But there's bad people out there. And so all of the good people, of course, are going to be in heaven, and all of the bad people, well, maybe they'll just stop existing or something. But we think to ourselves, of course God's going to be good to me. And maybe we can just quiet down those other people. You see here, and this is the message of the scripture over and over again, the Jonah who ran away and the Ninevites who were guilty of war crimes were equal in their standing before God. You see, heaven is not a place for good people. It's a place for forgiven people. There's an equal standing before Jesus. All of us have fallen short. All of us have committed crimes. All of us have made mistakes and sinned and hurt other people. And all of us are relying on the same gift of God's love. But Jonah thought, I'm a good person, and those people are bad people. And it kept him from having gratitude. It kept him from having mercy. So God's going to try to teach him the lesson. But as we move on, I want to ask, do you believe you've been given a second chance? Are you aware of the grace in your life? Is it hard for you to think about good things that have happened that you haven't earned, worked for, deserved? Or do you feel like you've gotten the short end of the stick? It's a good spiritual practice to recognize the grace in your life. Jonah never really repented. Jonah never really came to a place in which he realized that he made his own mess. Verse 5. Jonah went out of the city and sat to the east of the city and made a booth for himself there. He sat under it in the shade till he should see what would become of the city. So imagine, right, Jonah walks down Hollywood Boulevard or Sunset and he goes, you're all going to hell. And then he goes up to the Hollywood sign and he sets out a lawn chair below a palm tree or something just to watch. And he's like, oh, for sure God's going to rain fire on these people. But he knows in the back of his mind, God is nice and stuff, so I don't know. So he does this, and it says, now the Lord God appointed a plant and made it come up over Jonah, so that it might be a shade over his head to save him from his discomfort. So you see, he's sitting up on the hill, he's watching the city, he's seeing what's going to happen, and God magically, somehow, supernaturally, miracle, makes a plant grow up to shade him. That's the story. And he's comforted. He's in the Middle East, in the desert, it's hot. That's nice. So it says, so Jonah was exceedingly glad because of the plant. Remember, he was exceedingly displeased earlier. He thought it was exceedingly evil of God. Well, now he's got some shade. He's like, all right, God is dope. I'm into this. He's He's exceedingly happy now. I was really upset when you're going to be nice to my enemies, but I'm really happy now that you've given me some shade. And it says it was because he was comforted. It says, but when dawn came up the next day, God appointed a worm that attacked the plant so that it withered. When the sun rose, God appointed a scorching east wind, and the sun beat down on the head of Jonah so that he was faint. And he asked that he might die and said, it is better for me to die than to live. So Jonah here is like, I'm exceedingly happy because I have some shade. And then God is like, you ever seen the Wizard of Oz where there's the legs of the witch or the good witch that gets smashed and then the legs curl back? Can you picture that? You guys seen the Wizard of Oz? If not, you're like, what are you talking about? It's the slippers, and the legs curl back. That's what I'm picturing, the curling back of those legs as they wither away. That's what I'm imagining, the palm tree is just it just rolls up, okay? So he's sitting there, and the tree comes up, and he has shade, and he's like, life is good. Praise you, God, because life is so good right now. And then God just says, okay, what happens when I take it away? And Jonah, punk Jonah, who's just so focused on himself, is like, I wish I would just die. Oh my God, I'm going to get a sunburn. I'm going to miss my yoga class this week. I'm such a victim. My life is so hard. Jonah, Punk Jonah is like, when I had some shade, my life was good, and now my shade's gone, and I might as well just kick the bucket. Jonah cares about the plant and the shade more than he cares about any of the people in Nineveh. And Jonah has such a small view of God rescuing him from the grave that being rescued from the grave for him doesn't compare to having a little bit of shade on a Saturday afternoon. And the sorrow of his life of rebellion against God doesn't even measure up to the sorrow of some bad weather. If that doesn't explain why I live in Los Angeles, I don't know what does. It's 80 degrees year-round. That's all I'm interested in. But God said to Jonah, verse 9, Do you do well to be angry about the plant? And Jonah said, yes, I do well to be angry enough to die. He digs his heels in. He's like a teenager. And the Lord said, You pity the plant for which you did not labor, nor did you make it grow, which came into being in a night and perished in a night. And should not I pity Nineveh, that great city, in which there are more than 120,000 persons who do not know their right hand from their left, and also much cattle? God says, you are so stuck on yourself that you don't even get. Look down at that city. Look down at the big city. There are people and animals and a flourishing, beautiful portrait of my creation. God's saying, I love these people. I love this city. God's saying, do you think the whole world exists for you to sit with your feet up in your comfort of your chair with some shade? Does the whole world exist for you to make money and be popular and successful? Does the whole world exist so that you could be beautiful and be in the right shape? Does the whole world exist for you to pursue your dreams and passions? Does the whole world exist for you to get your way whenever you want it, and for the whole world to revolve around you, for you to be able to go online and pick exactly what you want to buy and ship it in 2 hours? Does the whole world revolve around your every need? Or is there something bigger? Is there something greater? Is there a bigger purpose to being on earth? Jonah didn't get it. He was in a religious movement for his entire life. He talked to God, he read the scriptures, he was around it all. And he experienced God's love and God's rescue again and again, but Jonah didn't get it. Jonah thought it all revolved around him. And Jonah didn't realize that he had been rescued. Thought he was just a good person, not like those other people. The evidence of gratefulness is graciousness. The evidence that you really have gotten the good in your life to be feeling so taken care of, to feel so like you've gotten more than you deserve, that you feel free to treat other people better than they deserve. The evidence that you really appreciate the good in your life and the good that comes from God is to be able to look around and not think, what do I need to feel comfortable? But who does God want me to love? Friends, in this city, God is doing a great work. And it's easy to be here in the city as consumers, to have our favorite restaurants and to go to our favorite shows and to complain about the inconveniences and then to move past the people that are difficult and to be annoyed by the crowds. But God says, man, there are 120,000 people in Nineveh and all of their animals, and I love every person and every animal in that town. And so what about the 40,000 people in Silver Lake and all their dogs and cats? What about the 9 million in greater Los Angeles? 14 million in LA County. Every one of those numbers has a name. Every one of those names has a story. And God says, won't you have compassion on them? Won't you see them? Won't you see that we're all the same, that we're all in this together, that we all need the same thing? If you understand what I've done for you, God says, you will look out on the city and you will be moved to show grace. Let's pray. God, there's so many stories of grace here in this room right now.